You had better be ready to run through the jungle in this guerrilla warfare-filled episode of Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt. This brand new action-packed episode of Gundam Thunderbolt totally reminded me of Mobile Suit Gundam, the 8th MS Team. Easily one of my favorite Gundam anime of all time, and quite possibly my favorite. This week's episode featured one of my favorite things about the Gundam franchise. The fact that it's a series about giant robots, but they always manage to make it seem somewhat realistic and militaristic. That and the fact that this week's episode really piled on the action. We got lots of great drama, not to mention the return of a certain character that's going to make E.O. Fleming piss his pants. So overall, the main story in this week's episode is very simple. It opens up with the scene with Daryl and Carla, who are on a date. Now, this scene is really interesting because it's incredibly pleasant, it's very nice. You get to see that Daryl has formed a very strong relationship with Carla, where at the end of the very first season, it almost bordered on a brand new sexual relationship. Now things are a little different, with Daryl actually playing the father figure, and that's because Carla has gone cuckoo. At the very end of the 1-year war, she has gone through this extreme trauma, which has basically made her regress to a childlike state. And because of this, the Zeons are using Daryl as sort of like this catalyst, this sort of surrogate father to look after Carla until she eventually gets back in the right state of mind. Who knows how long that's going to take. I will say, though, that the scene of them just sort of hanging out with each other, going around this incredibly beautiful garden and having lunch together was just plain pleasant. Not to mention the scene itself had a lot of great atmosphere thanks, of course, to the music. And let me just speak about the music in this episode. It had this, like, 1970s Japanese movie vibe to it. Very old school sounding, and a lot of the times a lot of people can feel that the music feels very out of place in the Gundam Thunderbolt series. Frankly, I think it complements every single scene, and this was a great juxtaposition to the second half of the episode, which for the most part is just a giant jungle mobile suit battle, and you know I'm okay with that. The rest of the episode follows the Zeons as they make their way to the South Sea Alliance, where they're trying to pick up this one spy, and of course, they end up getting in a huge mobile suit battle with their brand new enemies. This scene is essentially just a big excuse to see some really cool mobile suits in action, and they feature some mobile suits that I've never really considered cool, but I do like seeing them all work together, and those are the At-Guy mobile suits, which are these amphibious mobile suits which were made famous in the original Mobile Suit Gundam, and even had a pretty big appearance in the 8th MS Team as well. And the fact that they're in this big jungle setting just immediately has all of these memories of that series just flushing into my head and reminding me why it's so awesome to see these Gundams have like these epic battles in the middle of a forest. It's just so much different than the battles that you see in space, which are open wide. You get to see everything that's going on. Here, you never know when an enemy is going to be lurking around a corner, and that adds to a lot of tension in the series. Not to mention, of course, Daryl has an upgraded At-Guy of his very own, which has all of this crazy shit attached to it, which allows him to act as sort of like the reconnaissance member of the team, mapping out the entire battlefield and looking out for any possible enemies. In fact, the actual battle in this episode starts because there's this one kid from this village who notices the mobile suits and starts to run away, and they give chase. And this one stupid Zeon soldier decides that he's going to take out this kid with his Heat Hawk, which are those, like, beam axes, and right as it starts to heat up, it starts to cause the trees around him to start catching on fire, which gets the attention of everyone in the village, allowing this kid to set off this big firework, which flies into the sky, and the South Sea Alliance comes in, and that's when we have this big, epic, no-holds-barred mobile suit battle, which, like I said, is very reminiscent of the 8th MS Team, being very brutal. And you know what? That works for a series like Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt pulls no punches when it comes to its mobile suit battles and how brutal they can actually be, whether it be just the blunt attacks of a lot of the characters, or whenever another opponent is defeated, they actually end up just stepping right on top of their head. Little moments like this that really make this just seem like such an intense Gundam series. And honestly, I can't do the action scene justice. It's just something that you have to see for yourself. I will say, however, that if you like the 8th MS Team, you're certainly going to like this episode right here. It just pours the action on, on, it's great. And then at the end of the episode, we have a really great cliffhanger ending, where as the Zeons are fighting against the South Sea Alliance, we also have the Spartan ship, which is coming in, the part of the Federation, and as they're making their way in, they're also ambushed by the South Sea Alliance, and E.O. Fleming notices a very familiar voice on the intercom, as well as one that is piloting this other ship, and it just so happens to be his former lover, Claudia, who should be dead, by the way. So what's the rundown on this episode of Mobile Suit Gundam Thunderbolt, another fantastic episode of a fantastic anime series? This is one that I'm really starting to appreciate a little bit more than the second season. It's not as action-packed as the first one was, but it's taking a lot more time to actually develop its characters, and man, Daryl just cannot catch a freaking break. Not only is he constantly losing his limbs and all of the people that he loves in battle, but just as he's getting ready to start forming a real loving relationship with Carla, she becomes a brain-dead child. It's just really depressing, but seeing him go as far as to actually act as her father really speaks volumes for his character, and it almost seems as if he's also being stringed along as well. The Zeons themselves are desperately hoping that Carla is going to come back to her senses, as she is a very valuable asset to the Zeons themselves, but that opening scene of this week's episode, honestly, I think added a lot of levity to the rest of this week's episode, which for the most part was very action-packed. It was really cool getting to see like a whole squadron of AT guys go into the forest and work together and battle against all of these mobile suits which are used by the South Sea Alliance, which are glorified GMs or GIMs, whatever you want to call them. I'm not quite sure what they're called, but they basically have that general look to them, and they're no slouches either. They managed to bring a lot of heat into battle. One in particular goes toe-to-toe with Daryl himself with basically no problems whatsoever, and it manages to be a really intense fight. I don't know what it is about seeing Gundams fight in the jungle, but it's just always really exciting to me. Just the actual setting makes for a really unique battle scene for all of these giant robots. I mean, seeing Gundams and mobile suits fight in space is like a dime a dozen at this point, so whenever we get to see them fighting on the ground, I get really excited. Honestly, if I had to say, I think some of my favorite battles actually take place on the ground as opposed to in space, where basically they might as well just be swimming around in water. One of the coolest things, again, about this series is how they managed to take classic mobile suits and slightly jazz them up a little bit with some brand new upgrades. Case in point being Daryl's upgraded AT guy, which has this ridiculous giant mask that goes over its already ridiculous giant head, and then it has this like giant thing that can open up like a giant flower, and it's able to map out the entire area, find out where the enemies are going to be. I also love how it sort of like explodes into the ground as it like sort of grounds the AT guy in place. It's really nice stuff like this that sort of differentiates this from the other Gundam series. This also has the double benefit of allowing Bandai to sell even more freaking Gundam models, as they're able to sell an AT guy with all of the upgraded stuff that Daryl was using in this episode. I was kind of upset that we didn't really get to see much from the Gundam Atlas or even from E.O. Fleming in this episode. Still, it was really great to spend a little bit of time with the Zeons, who for the most part have been put on the back burner on the second half of this season, but it looks like they're finally starting to bring both of these stories together, now that we have three completely different factions that are going up against one another. We have the Federation, we have the Zeons, and now we have the South Sea Alliance, which leads me to believe that maybe the Zeons and the Federation are going to have to team up together to take down this brand new threat, which is still incredibly mysterious. Case in point, Claudia. Why in the hell is she even a part of the South Sea Alliance, and how in the hell is she even alive in the first place? She was killed in space. She was shot. She should have just gone into the vacuum of space, and that should have been the end of her character. But no, she is back to haunt E.O. Fleming. And not only that, but I'm sure it's going to add a lot of fantastic drama to this series, especially when you get to see this brand new relationship which is forming between E.O. and Bianca. I honestly cannot wait to see how all of that is going to play out, and I can't wait to see all three of these factions converge on one another in the next episode of the series. It's very exciting times. It also helps that this was another fantastic looking episode with lots of great animation. All of the action scenes were done with a lot of gusto, so there's nothing wrong with that. Certainly, this is an episode that is a feast for the eyes, but something that will also appeal to those who are looking for a very good story and some great characterization. So, this was a solid episode of Thunderbolt, which must not be missed. so make sure to check it out, Gundam fans. And of course, this was another awesome episode of this incredibly inventive, original net animation from the Gundam team, so make sure to check it out. I'm going to give this episode another solid 5 out of 5. I would have liked the episode to go a little bit longer. This one was just a tad shorter than the other episodes at a mere 16 minutes, but still, every single second of it looked really good. It had great storytelling, and for something to be able to do that in that small amount of time is something that needs to be applauded. So check it out, Gundam fans. If any of you did watch this brand new episode of Gundam Thunderbolt, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Are you enjoying the drama of the series? How in the hell did Claudia survive? Did you have a favorite action scene from this episode? What do you hope to see from the rest of this brutal Gundam anime? Thank you guys for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Gundam anime related. Make sure to leave me a comment telling me what you thought about the episode. And of course, if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. Thank you all again for watching. I will see you guys next time. And as always, stay damn, baby.